Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Bolara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Ray Woods. Ray is from a small town in South Mississippi. He moved to Georgia in 2016 and started his real estate journey there. Ray, I'm going to stop there in terms of the intro because I actually want to let you tell your story. But first, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for being here on the show. Thanks for taking the time this recording on a Saturday morning. So I appreciate you giving up a piece of your weekend to spend time and tell the listeners your stories. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Jason, definitely good morning and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely glad to have you. Why don't we start with just that, having you tell your story, tell the listeners kind of your background, and then we'll dive in from there.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, I am from South Mississippi, small town. The neighborhood is called Catahoula, so nobody knows what that is. So, I typically just tell everybody I'm from Biloxi, Gulfport, Mississippi area. So, 10 minutes from the water. Water's about a little bit darker, the color of my background on the call here. So it's not really too intriguing to go to the beach there.
It's a
But
little
yeah,
muddy.
I'm from South Mississippi, right? Exactly. And I ended up going to community college. I went there. I was playing football there for about a year or so, got injured, decided to just go ahead and transfer. Ended up going to Ole Miss for my mechanical engineering degree. And basically, after I graduated, it was all about climbing the corporate ladder and until I started being introduced to entrepreneurship and got into real estate soon after.
Awesome. And so, as you were sort of climbing that corporate ladder, how did you get introduced to real estate? What was your, kind of first taste? How did you get started?
So this was interesting. So I when I graduated 2015, I was working for an automotive company and there was this lady that worked in the scrap dock and I wanted to go back to school to get my master's in sports science or sports engineering. I was an athlete in school. I played football, I ran track, I fought MMA for a few years. So it was like my passion to still stay in sports, even though I wasn't
Yeah.
competing, and kind of have an engineering side to that. And so I was talking to the lady. She introduced me to this guy out of Denver, Colorado, because Denver, Colorado was one of the schools that offered sports engineering. I was going to get my master's in. I ended up connecting with this guy, and we're talking. And when I went home one holiday, it was Thanksgiving. I was outside on the phone with this guy. Now, I never met him, never seen him in person, really didn't know much of who he was. I researched. He was like one of the deans of the school there. He was pretty high up at the campus. And he was a multi-millionaire. Didn't even know that either. We was talking on the phone for about 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
And he was basically telling me, you need to get into entrepreneurship. You need to learn about digital marketing. You need to look at these entrepreneurs. He was giving me a bunch of names like Robert F. Smith, Lonnie Johnson, Robert Kiyosaki popped up, like a bunch of different people. And he said, you need to study these people. You need to understand how this works. I knew nothing of it. And so I went down this rabbit hole. In the first book, which is what most people end up coming across, was Rich Dad Poor Dad, was the first book that I started reading. And I ended up becoming obsessed with money, how it worked, because in my household, nobody understood money. Nobody knew how to even budget. Finances wasn't all that great. Me graduating, making 55,000 a year was more money than most people in my neighborhood. So understanding money, understanding entrepreneurship, understanding marketing, understanding real estate, all different types of things kind of led me to go that path of learning about real estate more from that book Robert Kiyosaki made. And that started with a lady in the scrap dock. You never know who you know, right? Who
Yeah.
you come across.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great point, and it's kind of funny because people in the space, in real estate space, will often talk about, just make sure you just always talking about what you're doing, where you're trying to get, that kind of thing, because for exactly the reason you just described, you just never know who's going to be like, oh, connect me, I know this person. And so I think a lot of people are sometimes uncomfortable, sort of talking about even what they do, but especially when it comes to money, people don't necessarily like having money conversations. They don't necessarily
Hmm.
like sort of talking to people about what they make or what they want to make or what their aspirations financially are. And I think a lot of that comes down to kind of what you mentioned is people they don't understand money, and they don't understand how to make it work for them, and they don't want
Right.
to. It's a little bit scary, and it's uncomfortable to talk about something you don't necessarily know how it works. So,
Right.
um,
And in my household, I give this discussion all the time, even to my mom to this day. You know, one of the biggest reason a lot of households split up is because of finances.
mhm, yep,
If money wasn't an issue, then a lot of problems would be solved in the household. And so even if it hurts, the conversation needs to be had and we have discussions. I do the budgeting in my household for the finances. I'll bring my wife in here and we'll go through the spreadsheet. I'll be like, this is what's happening. Here's where we can spend money. Here's where we can't. Here's what we can't do. Here's what we can do. And basically lay down the ground rules at that point.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They're important conversations to have, and again, uncomfortable, but I think a lot of times, sort of those it's those uncomfortable conversations that are, sort of most important to have.
Mhm.
um Ray, what happened, sort of after your conversation with this gentleman? Where did you go from there? What were your next steps?
So besides my mom and my wife coming outside telling me to come inside and eat because the food getting cold, they was, it was I couldn't really focus much whenever I got back to the table. So I go back inside and my mind is just running crazy. And I'm just like, man, this guy is I don't even know this guy. I still have the notes in my phone that I wrote down having a discussion with this guy. And I didn't sleep. I ate, but I didn't sleep. And you would think that after you eat, you have the fooditis and you'd be able to sleep good. Nope. My brain was going. I wake up the next morning. I start researching more into this. I start researching. As a few years go by, in Alabama at the time, I actually got into stocks for a period of time. So I started dabbling in stocks. I started day trading, and then I also did forex trading for a little bit. I started learning through babypips.com, I believe that's the website. I started learning through there. I actually started getting into wholesaling or trying to network with people in Alabama to learn about wholesaling because I knew a few people out there that was in real estate just from going to a random networking event. And I didn't really have much physical help there. So I ended up buying a course from Fortune Builders. It was a $500 course on wholesaling. I basically was studying that and I really didn't go anywhere with it. And it wasn't because of the course was bad. It was just I'm a person that I like to be hands on. And I didn't have anybody hands on to do that. And so, we looked at different locations to move, and we ended up making a trip just for a getaway to Atlanta. But the main reason we even went there was because Fortune Builders had that 2 3 day event over the weekend. And as I went to that event, my eyes even opened more because we started learning about taxes, learning about setting up entities, learning about different strategies of real estate. It was just a plethora of information. And so I'm like, okay, now we finna go deeper in this rabbit hole. So then I started reading more of Robert's books. I started looking at the corruption of the financial system. I started understanding the fractional bank reserve. I started understanding credit. It was madness, and my stress level went up out the roof. So
Sounds about right.
and it was just a journey of understanding money as a whole and figuring out why is it that I don't have this money, or why is it that money is just floating around in the air, and how do I get it? How can I grab some of this money? And so whenever I got to Atlanta, when we moved here in 2016, I started wholesaling physically with the group in Atlanta, and that's kind of where my journey started, getting physical help from people and a group of people to kind of help me go through this business.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I feel like what you described is sort of that mindset shift that a lot of people go through, where you see, maybe you have a scarcity mindset around money. You think there's not enough. It's always kind of it's a struggle to get there, to realizing that, or switching to having an abundance mindset towards money, where we're realizing that it's out there, that there's plenty of money to be had, and you just need to figure out the ways to do it, sort of most efficiently. And so then going ahead and getting around people that are doing what you want to do. So starting with wholesaling, in kind of, did you was that sort of a jumping off point for you? What's next in your journey?
So when I got into real estate, I was never a person of not taking risk. And I think that kind of stemmed from, so I started being bullied in middle school, high school, through most of those years, and then in college, which is why I even got into MMA. And MMA kind of built more of a tougher personality for me. So I never had an issue with taking risk or doing something. So basically, I never really had a limiting belief on what I couldn't do. I just needed to figure out how to do it. That's all I needed. And so some of the times I would just go in head first, which I don't recommend. I definitely recommend getting proper coaching. And I was kind of like a wildfire that needed to be controlled and contained to go along the right path, which is why I started looking for coaching physically. When I started in wholesaling in 2016, I did just that. I kind of was crazy. I went all over the place. I was even doing things like affiliate marketing and all this other stuff. I was still researching, just trying to get some type of money. And at the time, when I came to Georgia, I was unemployed. And being unemployed was enjoyable because I kind of got tired of working in corporate, dealing with politics and all of this type of stuff there. And I enjoyed that period of time. Unfortunately, I had to go back to work, but at the time I was enjoying it and I was out showing houses for investors. I was basically working with them to try to sell their house. I was out looking for deals myself. So I was driving for dollars. I was putting signs up out in the neighborhood. I was trying to get leads in and pull things together, make some deals happen. And I had about 4 or 5 deals that actually fell through. And all those months of pushing and grinding and waking up early, nothing happened. Nothing happened. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm quitting. I said, I'm quitting. I said, I'm quitting. I went back to work for an engineering company, Japanese automotive, and I took a long break. I took a long, long break to try to basically figure out what's going on because I was dealing with the stress of not having money in the household. I was dealing with the stress of trying to figure out why this entrepreneur thing ain't working. And then I was dealing with the stress of having to go back in corporate and deal with politics. So it was a definite change of mindset there that I had to endure in order to come back to the game. Because ultimately, I came back to real estate, which is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing financial analysis. I enjoy looking at a project going from, bad to awesome. And, those things are exciting to me. And so 2020 is when I came back into real estate. And within like 3 months, I closed like 3 or 4 deals back to back. And I'm like, well, why didn't this happen back then?
Yeah. Timing, sometimes the timing just isn't right, right? It's not because not for lack of effort, not for, necessarily anything that you did, but I think it does speak to, kind of the willingness to stick it out. And I think, I'm a big proponent of never quitting. And I think, but I do think a break is okay, right? It's,
Mm.
sometimes you have to reset and figure out, and at some point you do need some money to live on. So if that means, you have to get a job, then that is okay. And I think there's a lot of, I don't know if it's pressure or what, but a lot of like, oh, you go into real estate because you gotta quit your job. That's the whole goal behind it. And it's sometimes people lose sight of the, sort of value of having that W-2 job, what it can do for you, uh, you know consistent income, maybe health insurance, maybe even just the network. So I think that there's a lot to it, and it's finding whatever balance works for you. And I think there's, maybe maybe had you not quit, you would have closed those deals 2 months later in 2016. Who knows what happens? But it's ultimately you went back to it, found success, and it's just a demonstration of the fact that, sort of real estate is a slow game, and trying to think that it's going to be, sort of a get rich quick overnight scheme is it's just not.
Yeah, that's not the case. And
Yeah,
that's kind of how I operated when I was there. But at the same time, I think at that period of time while I wasn't closing deals, it was because I was hurting. I was hungry, I was financially
yeah,
unstable, and I was trying to make something happen so bad that it was kind of like I was forcing it, which is why it didn't happen. And then
Yeah.
when I came back and I was working, and then things were kind of stable, then the deals started closing. I was closing deals while I was working. Like I got a video on my YouTube channel while I'm on the phone with my partner, and he's at the closing attorney's office, and they're cutting a check for me. So it's like, things kind of leveled out once, the financial. And I tell everybody too, you know, this the thing people get tripped up on is following these gurus. And I say this because I ended up doing the same thing. I was following these big gurus that were at a point where they can't really understand, I would say anymore, but they can't really understand the people that was way down here. And it's hard for them to understand that because they're making a ton of money. They have all these resources. They have this big network. But somebody that doesn't have all of that, how can they really flourish? And honestly, the best thing that you could do is to get a job. And even to this day, I still work in a job. But at the same time, you also have to make some sacrifices after work to make it to where if you want this business to work for you, you need to work on it after you leave. So then you can eventually leave corporate and go do what you want to do, basically.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's just finding that balance. And I think I love the point that you brought up about, sort of maybe the that you were hurting, that, sort of the desperation. I think that's a thing that I see, in the syndication space. It's something that I think the people that are good at raising capital, it's because they are coming from a place of the truly offering opportunities, finding pain points for investors and trying to solve them, and not looking at it from, I have to get this done, and if I don't get it done, it's a big problem for me, right?
Yeah.
And I think that can apply to sort of any sort of deal, right? Like the best salespeople aren't coming at it, if you have that desperation feel, whoever you're selling to is gonna know that. It's not hard to realize the difference between someone who's truly selling you something or offering you something or whatever it is because they think it benefits you, versus here I am trying to make something happen for myself. So I think it's a great point that you brought up about that just, you were not at the right point to make the deal happen because of your own, sort of situation and
Yep.
feelings of desperation. So well, that was in 2020. What has been going on since then? Where did you go from there?
Man, it's been a crazy ride. It's been definitely a crazy ride. This business is not as easy as people make it to seem. Trying to be a full-time entrepreneur is not what they say on the internet. It's completely false. So don't listen to them.
Yeah.
But since 2020, when I closed those deals, I wanted to get to the point of building up cash flow because I still kept in my mind from Rich Dad Poor Dad and a bunch of other financial books I've read. And I said, let me look for ways to build capital or to build some cash flow. And so I used some of the money from the wholesaling to kind of pay off some debt that I had. And then I was able to get more capital through just applying for credit cards. And I was able to use some of that credit to furnish my first Airbnb. And so I ended up getting into the Airbnb space with my partner. He manages that particular property for me. And we basically, I think it was about $18,000 or so that took to furnish a luxury Airbnb here in Atlanta. It's right next to the Mercedes Dome, so it's in a good location. It rents out decent. It definitely is a roller coaster ride because you're dealing with people of all different walks of life. So you kind of have to manage that aspect. And when I got into Airbnb, I said, okay, this is great. I'm getting some cash flow. We had maybe 1 or 2 months that wasn't so good, but every other month was positive cash flow. And after I got into that, I started trying to slide over to multifamily. I knew about multifamily because I was studying I took one of Grant Cardone's course, and I actually met him, I think 2017, I want to say, when I met him at a Growth Con along with a bunch of other people. And, whenever I got into multifamily, I kind of had a gist of the business, understanding NOI, understanding cap rates. I'm already an engineer in my career job, so I do financial analysis at work. I do process improvements, and so I kind of took some of those traits over to real estate and said I want to understand more about underwriting and looking at deals from a financial perspective. And so I ended up joining the GOB network, and me and a small group of people formed Goya 7 Capital, what you see in the back. And Goya 7 Capital, our purpose is to basically educate people in multifamily real estate and help individuals get a return on their money definitely better than any other market right now, at least sustainable, because you know the stock market is going crazy and even crypto market is crazy. So we basically started going over to the multifamily space. What happened was we ended up going through a year or two with no deals. And we either tried to syndicate deals or we tried to find deals ourselves. And what we was having issues with was battling big companies that were liquid enough to get into deals that did not pencil out, battling people who just wanted to have tax advantages with properties that did not pencil out. So we had to change our kind of strategy there. So we kind of slid over to fewer unit for the property, so maybe 20 to 100 units versus going after like these big 200-300 unit properties. So we kind of started small, and I would recommend that for everybody is to kind of start small so you understand, especially if you're working with new people, you want to be able to understand how those individuals work with you on something small before you get into something big, because you don't want to get into bed with a business partner and you're in something that big and you don't like doing business with them. That's not going to be fun. That's not going to be fun. So enduring that type of situation, if it was to happen on a 5 unit versus a 150 unit, that's definitely you definitely want to do it that way. And so in March, we ended up closing on our as a co-GP, we closed on our first property by raising capital because it wasn't our properties per se initially, but we raised capital, came in as a co-GP for a 186 unit deal in Phoenix, which was a big accomplishment for us. I was excited. I flew out there to the property in Arizona. We looked at it, did some videos and stuff, talked to the management team and was kind of just getting to know them a little bit. That was exciting.
Yeah.
And now at this point, we are raising capital for a 32 unit townhome in Atlanta. It's right by the Beltline. And we are also getting ready to raise capital for a 106 unit apartment complex here in Atlanta as well. The only reason that worked was because they had a loan assumption and the interest rates were pretty low. But that's kind of been the ride right now, and it's been pretty interesting because I've learned a lot. I'm still learning a lot. We're still underwriting deals. I've submitted probably 10 LOIs in the past couple of weeks or so. So there's still a push to get more properties and build up the team together.
Yeah, sure. And it's, I mean, you mentioned that it's not as easy as it is sometimes people put out there on the internet and social media and things like that. And I think the reality is that, we had a substantial market shift, right? So it wasn't, not that it was easy before, but it's a whole lot harder now than it was even a year ago. So
Mhm.
everybody's kind of in that space of, just trying to reevaluate, do the things that are, sticking to fundamentals and stuff. But you do, in a down market, you've got to work. I heard someone say this at a conference, but basically, you got to work 4 times as hard to
Right.
accomplish the same thing you were before. And so that's what a lot of people are doing. A lot of people are looking, I think, at adjusting strategies. You mentioned, looking at the smaller properties. I think
Uh-huh.
that's a great strat. I think it just points to the fact that real estate is very resilient. You need to there's infinite number of ways to kind of find success within real estate. You just have to figure out what
Mhm.
works for you, and then go out there and put in the work. I mean, I think it's really that simple. You just have to,
Right. And people's I had some people reach out to me like, man, how you get into a deal like that and this and that? And it's like, man, I didn't know you was balling like that. And I said, I'm not balling to that point yet. But it's it's
yeah,
it's about the network and the work you put in. And for a few of the deals we had, when it comes to networking, with this market right now, you have to figure out where you fit in the puzzle. And you have somebody that's missing something. And for there's a few people out here that I've networked in Atlanta that have very good connections. They have connections with the city mayor. They have connections with the planning and development committee. They have connections with agents where they can get deals way below market value. versus what somebody like me and my team come through being new to the multifamily space.
Yeah.
But we have people that have the money on our side. And so now it's like, okay, I can see where we fit together. And
Mhm.
so now you work with those people, and that's how you get deals done. It's not about trying to go do everything by yourself. Because when I started learning this game, I realized there's nobody doing anything by themselves. It's very
Yeah.
few people that's buying giant properties by themselves. There's not that many people that either is that liquid or want to put that much liquidity into a property without raising capital or maybe going through a bank. It's
Yeah.
either through syndication or maybe a group of their own family or something is investing into a property. That's what I've seen. And so I met with an individual out here who had those properties. I said, hey, we can help you raise capital. We may come across properties that we can buy collectively within our own group together to kind of build our portfolio and kind of build our credibility in the marketplace. And you meet people that have expertise in the field doing construction. You work with them, they just need deals. So it's like you have to find where you fit in the puzzle piece to start making these things work.
Mhm.
If not, then you're not going to get anything. It just doesn't work out like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely true. And I think it's something that probably a lot of people don't know when they get into the space. It just just what level of partnership is required, right? You may have your own partners within your company. Within Goya 7, you've got partners, but then you're gonna actually outside of that partner with other people, and people have you're looking for partners with complementary strengths, and that's really
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned you guys are raising capital. You're if someone has a deal, they're going to need capital. If someone needs, it's a value add strategy apartment complex, they need someone to manage that asset management, run construction. That might be another person. Like there's just so many different roles within it that it's like almost infinite spaces for people to fit in. And so you just need to really, like you said, find where you fit, where your spot is in that, kind of conglomerate of people that are needed
Mm-hmm.
to take down these large apartment complexes. So I think it's a great point, and sort of a great demonstration of what really happens in the space generally. As you said, it's not usually just sort of one single person says I'm going to go buy myself this 200 unit apartment complex. It's
Right.
it's really it's really a team. It's a team on the general partner side. It's also a team because you're bringing in investors. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you may literally have 100 people or more involved in some of these investments to majority of them as limited partners, but then a group as the general partner. So it's, I think, a great sort of topic here to discuss and bring up, and I'm glad that you did. But it's just, I think a lot of people from the outside probably see it daunting and think, I can never buy an apartment complex. How do you do that? And it's like, well, how you do it is by bringing in a whole bunch of other people to help you. I mean, really, that's kind of what it comes down to.
You had a couple people that I was working with ask me that, man, how did you get into that? What kind of money did you bring in? And I told them straight up, I said, I'm broke. I ain't got no money.
Yeah.
I ain't got no money. I'm broke. And I said, it's a collaboration. As we was looking for deals and we couldn't find anything, I thought we was doing something wrong. And what I typically like to do is I like to find a root cause of why something's not working. That's just an engineer mind. And what came down to the issue was, unfortunately, a big part of that is the market because the individual that we partner with in Phoenix, they have billions of dollars in assets under management. And I talked to them and I said, hey, you know, what is it that I'm potentially doing wrong, or what's going on in your end that's not working? And when he told me that they used to have a deal flow, I don't remember the exact number, but it was a deal flow of like 100 or something just coming in constantly. That dropped down to below 20.
Right.
And I said, so if these big guys are having issues with getting deals, and I'm a little person for now in the market, then I know it's not 100% me doing something wrong. It's just an unfortunate situation. So you have to kind of tweak on how you have to get into these deals. And when we find these deals, I told the people that was asking me about the money, I just find other people that are looking for returns. We make sure that we can get the returns for them. We focus on making sure that they get their money. We focus on making sure we operate the property in such a way that is going to be beneficial for the investors. and we bring those people in together. And, you know, for our team, that's what we've been doing across the map, either Ohio, Texas, Georgia, Arizona, which is kind of the markets that we're kind of spread in there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. Ray, I want to switch gears. I want to ask you the questions I get to ask every guest. And so the first one is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. I like to ask everybody, so what is your why? What drives you, kind of you have a career as an engineer, you're successful. You could so probably pretty easily just stick with that. But what drives you towards, sort of your shirt says be infinite. So what's your why?
Man, I just want to drive fast cars and travel. That's all. Nah,
There you go.
that's a little small portion of it. But so when I was younger, my dad passed away when I was 7. So basically, I kind of had to become the man of the household pretty early. Had a stepdad era that wasn't too fun. That's a whole nother story. And it was just me and my mom in the household basically. And so I did any and everything to take care of my mom. I started working early as I could, which at the time the law would only allow you to work at 16 unless of course you knew somebody and you was working for him at 14 or something.
Right.
I started working as a dishwasher, and then I basically have been working ever since then. So 16, I was working. Hurricane Katrina even came at one point. I was trying to go clean up a FEMA. They was making $700, $800 a month, a week, and I wanted to bring in money for my mom. I wanted to help her out. I wanted to get her out of the lifestyle that we was in because she did the best that she could. And I was trying to change our family paradigm by getting more money, by trying to learn this thing we call life and make a better life for her because she's been through so much. So the main focus was to help my mom out. And now my wife, who basically has earned that right as my wife to be part of my why, to be like, look, she's from a different part of the country where they had a bunch of war and stuff over there where the financial area or the financial household wasn't in order like it should have been. Same way for my household. And so that's kind of why I do things. I do things for them. I don't, there are times I always, look for stuff for me because I have a limit on how much of me I'm going to give to others because I need to make sure that I'm good before I just try to give all my energy to everybody else. And that's kind of what I do. I help my mom understand finance, and she's been following my advice and gotten, you know, more credit cards and higher limits, and she's understanding it. She's been happy. She's had issues with her health, with diabetes and stuff. I've been able to help, bring her diabetes to a point where she doesn't have to take insulin no more based on her the food she eat and how she work out. So everything I do is for them. Every single thing I do is for them. And the only time that I ask from them to let me have my piece is if I want to play video games, drive fast cars, and travel. That's all I ask. Everything else, y'all can go buy whatever. You can go do this and go do that. Just when it's time for me to have my piece, let me do that. And that's basically what my why is there.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. Um, tell us something about yourself that maybe isn't common knowledge, special skill, hobby, anything that you're comfortable sharing. Just basically want to let the listeners know you a little better.
Yeah, I'm pretty blunt. This is probably why I get along with people from New York more than I do down south. So the people, some people down south don't really take real information lightly. So just know that if you do ask me questions, I'm gonna tell you like it is. If you ask for advice, I'm gonna tell you like it is. If you don't like it, then don't ask me a question. So it's plain simple as that. The other thing I would say I'm pretty gifted at understanding a concept easier than others, than the average person. So when I started in Airbnb, the reason I didn't physically get into Airbnb was because I wanted to understand how the business worked on the outside. Because if I wanted to continue to build a portfolio, which right now, outside of the Airbnb I own, I also manage a 20 portfolio Airbnb for another person. So I wanted to understand that business on the higher level side, and that's like my superpower. I'll I'll literally sit back and stalk what somebody's doing or watch what they're doing. Let's use that as more of an appropriate term. I'll watch what they're doing and then I will basically ask them questions. I'll be like, so you did that this way. So that means you're going to end up doing that. And I'll just tie the pieces together. In my mind, it's like the little red wire board that they use on like the Criminal Mind shows and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that's kind of how my mind operates. I'm able to put together a process that I can even explain to somebody else and dumb it down to where a 5-year-old kid can come out and do the business. So it's kind of like a superpower for me to kind of make things complex or make a complex situation easier.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, my wife's Southern, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'm from Boston, so I
So
know
you know
the
exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about. But when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
No, they can reach out to me on social media. Real estate with Ray is the handle on most of my social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, uh, YouTube. I got my YouTube channel. I actually go through my journey from when I started in real estate and kind of giving advice and educating other people on how to get into this business. You can see my TikTok as well. My TikTok, I'm pushing to get to 20,000 followers. I'm at 19. So
Nice.
we pushing to get to 20,000 followers. So real estate with Ray is a handle. They can reach out to me there. I respond to everybody. So
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. Final question for you, Ray. What piece
mhm.
of advice would you give to someone who is trying to get started in real estate? They hear your story here, they're inspired, and they want to know, what's the next step? What do you think they should do?
So you're gonna have to do something you don't like. I personally, I don't mind working and I do it because I have to. I don't care to do it because I would rather be doing something that I want to do. So I would suggest you definitely get your financial household in order so there's less stress when it comes to dealing with bills. Because if you have stress with bills, you're not going to make anything work in real estate. There are a few people that are built different to where they do make that happen by force. But when you also have the uncertainties of the market going against you, like right now, it's best to have a stable income coming in and work on that side gig while you can. And so you need to make sure that you have that together. So then that your financial household doesn't take a toll on your mental capabilities because that will affect you heavily. When you look and you see that bill saying, bill is past due, or you look and see a truck outside coming to tow your car away, which has happened to me some years ago, saying that, basically your car got repoed, then you will make sure your financial household is in order so you don't stress out trying to do this business.
This is I'm not sure exactly what number as far as recording goes, but getting close to 250 episodes. No one has ever said that before. Like a lot of similar answers. No one has ever said that before as far as the um, advice, and it might be the best advice that anyone has ever given as far as an answer to that question, because it's gosh, it's like it's so true. It's just you know I get, like, we all want to take action on, that's sort of the entrepreneurial spirit, but you're so right. Like, you need to make sure that sort of the back office, your house is in order, and that will give you the foundation that you need to sort of then have that confidence that you can go do that in a business as well. So I really love
Right.
that. I think that was a great
Yeah,
piece to.
most of the people that I know now that are doing good in business, like even the guy in Arizona, he started in sales. He was working a job. He saved up money, started, then he ended up going back because he ran out of savings. So he ended up going back there. And when you're doing that business on the side for the period of time and you're working a job and you only have money to pay for your bills, the best value you can get, because technically you're still broke, the best value you can give is your time to people. And that's how I ended up kind of growing in a lot of stuff and been able to work with people to manage this big portfolio. And people reach out to me for help because they see the hustle and the grind I put in, the time I put in, until the point I can really instill a ton of capital to a particular deal. That's how you that's how you basically give value when you're broke. You give the time.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. You have those are one of the two main, I mean, really probably three main value adds that you can have as a person. Either you have capital, you have time, or you have a skill, right? Those are kind of the three things. And you may have all of them, but most people are lucky to have one. But just figure out which one it is that you have, and lean on it. Use it to sort of propel yourself forward and acquire the others. So
Right.
yeah, really, I mean, truly great piece of advice there, Ray. Thank you for that. And thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your story. I really do appreciate it. I think people are going to get a lot of value out of this episode.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I appreciate you having me on here again.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks listening, I know you're going to get a ton of value out of this. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can have more great guests like Ray come on in the future. Thank you all for listening.